Hi, this is Chris Foreman from Madness, and you're listening to the Stateside Madness podcast.
Hi there, folks out there. I'd like you and me, Tommy McGuire and his combo.
Hello, and welcome to the Stateside Madness podcast, the one and only podcast of the official Madness American fan service. I'm Lori, along with my co-host Polly, here to bring you news, reviews, and deep dives into the nutty sound of the British pop band Madness. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Stateside Madness. I'm Lori.
And I'm Polly.
And hey, just a reminder to everybody, yes, we're a podcast, but we're also so much more. We have a website, statesidemadness.com, and we are on all the major social media. We are the American branch of MIS, the Madness Information Service. So we have a really, really great episode today. Polly, you have sent me your playlist, and we're going to talk about it today. But before we do that, let's do the communicator.
All right, and up first on the communicator, August 8th, very, very important day in the Madness universe. It would be the birthday of our favorite guitarist, Chrissy Boy Foreman. And we do believe he is turning 66 this year. So happy birthday, Chris. Great guitarist, great supporter of Stateside Madness.
Yeah, happy birthday, Chris. Many, many more. I wonder, maybe we should rerun your Chris Quaffian calendar like we did last year for his birthday. What do you think? Should we rerun that on the socials?
Maybe we should. After all, only like 4 people saw it in the first fucking place.
And I think one of them was Chris and 3 other people. So I have some interesting news, Polly.
And what would that be?
Well, so there's a website called Chartable that tracks podcasts. Now it's tracking only Apple podcasts, so it's not tracking all of the different platforms. But guess what? We are charting in both Mexico and Argentina.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
That is wild. And of course, I would thank everybody in Mexico and Argentina who's listening to us. It boggles the mind. Every time one of these funny figures pops up, I can't believe anybody listens to me at all.
I can't believe anybody listens to you either.
No,
I kid. But so that's actually an interesting tie-in for a future episode that we're going to be working on in a few weeks, isn't there? Speaking of Central and South America.
That's true. So we just interviewed a couple of fine young folks, 2 of the women from Ratas and Zello, a punk band out of NYC, but they're not from NYC. They are a mixture of folks from El Salvador and various parts of the Latin world. So it's an all-female, all Latinx band, and they are just wonderful. And so in a few weeks' time, we're really unsure where it's going to fall in the schedule, but stay tuned. We will be playing that episode shortly.
And they kick all kinds of ass.
Yeah, you bet they do.
Let me tell you how I feel. I feel I'm scared.
We were trying to come up with something unique to do for this episode, and we kind of borrowed an idea from another podcast, and that is to create like a summer mixtape. And thinking back to like the 1980s, right, we used to have those Maxell or Sony cassettes, and you'd put together a mix for a special occasion. This is my mix for my road trip. this is the mix that I'm giving to my crush, that kind of stuff. And so we're kind of taking a little bit of a trip down memory lane and thinking in terms of putting together a mixtape, right? Or a playlist, as the kids call it these days.
In fact, that is what the kids call it. Yes. And so we're both going to take turns doing this. My turn came up first. And yeah, so this was a little intimidating working with the professor here. I wanted to make sure my list was somewhat cohesive. And I suppose a lot of people might have been thinking that I could have included a lot of ska, a lot of madness, and whatever like that. I could have, but I thought I would more or less go back to when I was a kid, and if I was making mixtapes, probably what I would have been listening to then. So for all intents and purposes, everything I came up with was either punk sounding, quasi-punk, in the realm of punk. And the full playlist is probably about 20 songs long. It's a bit lengthy to do an episode for the podcast of. So Lori and I are going to talk about a handful of them, and then you'll be able to find the full list on Stateside Madness on Spotify.
And, this is particularly timely, Polly, because right after you and I had this conversation, something popped up in my social media feed. It was from NPR, National Public Radio, but it was an article about how to curate and create a good playlist. It literally came up that same day that you and I had the conversation. So I don't know if that means that, Zuckerberg is spying on me or what, but yeah, so this is very timely. Is there a theme to this? You said this is music that you'd put together like from your childhood, but is there like a special occasion or anything, or?
Well, whenever possible, I would go peruse my albums and look for summer-ish songs that featured heavily in the punk genre. And there are a lot, don't get me wrong, but it is a little more limited than I would have liked. And not everything has a summer type, but maybe the argument could be made that these songs all lend themselves a little bit more to the dancey side of punk, or summerish, or it's just something I absolutely couldn't live without.
Okay. So I knew some of these songs. I didn't know all of them. So let's just go down the list and kind of walk us through and tell me what you've chosen and why.
So Peaches, not referring to the contemporary artist Peaches, it's actually referring to the song by the Stranglers, and it would also become the name of a compilation of their more or less greatest hits in 2002. So Peaches, aside from probably one of the best bass lines in punk, really is one of those summertime feel songs. Peaches, more or less, refers to ladies on the beach.
Okay.
Yeah. Before anybody thinks this is completely a chauvinistic sort of rant in the song, it's an interesting take on it. It's not that misogynistic or weird. And there's even a little bit about women empowerment and feminism in there. So listen to the entire song before passing judgment.
Strolling along, minding my own business. Well, there goes a girl and a half. She's got me going up and down. She's got me going up and down. Walking on the beaches, looking at the beaches. Well, I got the notion, girl, that you got some suntan lotion in that bottle of yours. Spread it all over my peeling skin, baby. That feels real good. All the skirts, lapping up the sun, lap me up. Why don't you?
So I confess I did not know this song. I do know a number of the Stranglers songs, but this was not one of them. It wasn't familiar to me. So it's a good, strong start to your mixtape, though. He's got that, like you said, that bass line. It just, hitting it full force as soon as you come into it. So what's next on the tape?
So next would be Big Audio Dynamite and the song V13. Now, we all know the story with Big Audio Dynamite. Mick Jones was sort of pushing the Clash in a more dance and electronic oriented sound after having toured the United States, particularly New York, where he really fell in love with what was happening on the African American music scene there. So he heads back to the UK, subsequently gets fired by the Clash, and he hooks up with Don Letts, the legendary producer and filmmaker, and starts Big Audio Dynamite. And V13, I think, is far and above their best song.
Yeah, so I consider myself a fan of Big Audio Dynamite, and I mentioned to you earlier, I mean, I have Megatop Phoenix, I have the Globe. I don't think I've ever heard anything off of this album, and you said this album predates Megatop Phoenix.
It does. Number 10 Upping Street is the album. Fun to say these days, what with what's going on at number 10 Downing Street. Yeah, I do believe that was either their first or second album.
All right, what's next?
So next would be from the classic early punk band Television. And the song would be Venus.
Was it tight tonight? Streets of bright. The world was so thin between my bones and skin. There stood another person who was a little surprised to be faced to face with a world so alive. How I felt. Did you feel low? No. I fell right into the arms. Venus,
Wow, you're really going old school with this tape here. I like it.
Very much so, yeah. So Television is one of my favorite bands probably of all time. And Venus, I think, is the standout number on Marquee Moon. A lot of people would debate that, but I actually just love the song. I love the sort of call and response thing that he gets from the band members. Tom Verlaine, I'm speaking of, gets from the band members with what, strange, interesting songs. Sounds great, just fantastic. And Television, they were there at the beginning, and they're lumped in with punk. A lot of people say, no, there's no way they can be punk. But I think what all the bands that came out of CBGB's, the underlying theme is that they were more or less just going on their own, doing their own thing. And that was the start of the DIY punk movement.
Okay, so next up, you have a band that I actually really like. I'll let you introduce it, but
That I do. So I chose the song Typical Girls by the Slits. Now, the Slits deserve to have been, but never quite got the notoriety of their late 70s punk peers. And, Typical Girls, sort of the prominent song off of Cut. They made a video for it, but I wouldn't be inclined to go for the easy pick aside from, this just is an all-around fantastic song, and does fit with the vibe of the playlist.
So next up, we have another band that I really like, and I am so disappointed that they once again have been snubbed by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I share that disappointment / don't share in that disappointment because I've long since given up on the idea of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame being of anything of real worth. But we're talking about Devo, Akron's finest. I would go as far as say Ohio's finest, maybe save for Bobby Rubin. But yeah, I chose the song Jocko Homo, which I think is really the defining Devo song.
Okay, so Polly, several months ago, you might remember I was a guest on the NXS Access All Areas podcast, and they did an episode specifically about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And we got into a little bit of a debate about Devo. Hayden, who is one of the Australian hosts, said that he considers Devo to be a novelty act. Now, when I mentioned this to you, you went off on a little bit of a rant, and I have this rant, and if it's okay with you, I'd like to play this rant as part of the episode because it's awesome.
Yes, by all means, I'll defend Devo in every way, shape possible.
You know, Polly, that a few months ago I was on the NXS Access All Areas podcast where we talked about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees. And I got into a little bit of a debate with Hayden, who's one of the two hosts, because he thinks that Devo is a one-hit wonder novelty act.
Oh, I'm on a plane to Australia right now. Let's duke that one out. No. So Whip It was, you might say, midway in their career. You know, Devo had been around for, I think, about 6 years prior to that, and just doing great underground punk. And I refer you to Jocko Homo if you have to go listen to one of their songs. Fucking awesome. No, Devo was the first band to really post, really 60s psychedelic experimental stuff, to try to do art rock that wasn't going to be schmarmy, I think. So, I'll die on that hill, baby. I will fight the Devo.
Okay, so this next one, Polly, I've heard of this band, but I confess I don't know much about them. So who do we have next?
So next we would have Gang of Four, and off their seminal album Entertainment, I chose the song Not Great Men. Now, it just seemed fitting. We lost Andy Gill last year, Andy Gill being the original guitarist of the band, and this is by far, their best work. First album, but, altogether just fantastic. And to me, it's probably, I'd say, one of the top 5 most important punk albums of all time.
All right. And what song are we going to listen to?
So it would be Not Great Men.
I'm hearing some similarity with Devo there.
Yeah, I bet. So they were purposefully, really groove oriented and heavy on bass, and the guitar was a lot less, that sort of machine gun riff and a lot more rhythmic in its own right. So yeah, there's no wonder there's similarities to Devo in that. Of course, on the other end, not a lick of keyboard in that song
that's
at
true.
all.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. So the next one is a band that we've actually talked about on the podcast before.
Yes. So I definitely wanted to fit the Undertones on the playlist. I think their style of really poppy, really catchy punk is just pretty much perfect for the list. And I had really deliberated about what song to put on, and I was really torn between My Perfect Cousin or Teenage Kicks. And of course, Teenage Kicks is kind of like the song that broke them. It's really what they're known for. And, I felt no compunction to go with real deep cuts or rarities on this particular playlist, because the whole point is I want it to be user friendly for the folks. So yeah, that's why Teenage Kicks.
She was mine, she looked so good. I wanna hold her tight. Yeah, teenage kicks right through the night. I'm gonna call her on the telephone. Have her over 'cause I'm all alone. I need excitement.
And then the next one I chose, it would be Something's Gone Wrong Again by the Buzzcocks. Lori, what are your thoughts on the song, or maybe even on the Buzzcocks?
Well, I don't know this particular song. Again, this is the first time I'm hearing a lot of this. I just can't help but think of the movie 24-Hour Party People. So there's the scene where Howard Devoto is in the men's room of the hacienda, hooking up with Tony Wilson's wife. And then the actual Howard Devoto comes out and says, I don't remember this. But that's all I can think of now whenever anybody mentions the Buzzcocks. It's a great freaking movie.
That it is a great movie, and an important one for me for a couple of reasons. Mainly because it introduced me to Michael Winterbottom, the director, and his great way of breaking the fourth wall without it being schmucky. But then, yeah, he said Buzzcocks features in it. Happy Mondays features in it prominently, and Joy Division as well. So there's not a lot wrong with that movie. And I'd say probably one of Steve Coogan's better performances. So go find it, folks.
Hey, speaking of Happy Mondays, did you hear that Paul Ryder just passed away?
In fact, I did. Yeah, very sad and very young too. I would have assumed he would have been approaching 70, but as it turns out, he's not a great deal older than myself. So yeah, I was very saddened to hear that.
Yeah, that kind of floored me too. I think everybody thought it was going to be Sean.
And why wouldn't you? And can we even be sure that Sean hasn't died already?
And he's just kind of being artificially reanimated by drugs, right?
He's just been Weekend at Bernie'd.
There you go. All right.
You can take that out.
All right, so here's a band that I do know. Next up on your list.
Yes, and so we did speak about Mick Jones. We spoke about Big Audio Dynamite, and of course, I would be including the Clash on any mixtape. But I like to go a little bit deeper into my favorite album on this one, the album being Sandinista, and the song The Magnificent Seven.
The Magnificent Seven. Ring, 7 a.m. Move yourself to go again. Cold water in the face brings you back to this awful place. Knuckle merchants and your bankers too. Let's get up and learn those rules. Weatherman and the crazy chief. One says sun and one says sleep. AM, the FM, the PM too. Turning out that boogaloo. Get you up and I guess you out. But how long can you keep it up? Give me Honda, keep you solid. So cheap and real phony. Hong Kong dollar, Indian cents, English pounds and Eskimo pence.
So, Lori, are you familiar with this one then?
I've heard it before. I'm not as familiar with it as I am a lot of their more recent stuff, the MTV era stuff, when I think maybe they kind of got a little bit more pop. But I like it, and I also like it because I know how influential this was on so many other bands.
Yeah, and just a real turning point for the Clash. This is the period following the tour of the United States and Mick Jones's stop in New York and his falling in love with African American music. It is their first, I believe, collaboration with Don Letts, which is, where Mick met Don Letts was through the Clash. To me, it's an underappreciated album. It's sandwiched in between two of their really popular albums. But like I said, I think it's their magnum opus. It's their finest piece of work.
Okay, this next one brings back some memories.
Yes, that it does. And I just spoke about them a moment ago. Joy Division, that is. And again, going right for the meat of their work with Love Will Tear Us Apart. So this is the start of new wave, a bit, the start of electronic, but to me, this is still pure punk. What are your thoughts on the song, Lori?
Oh, well, this takes me back to dancing in the goth clubs, when this song would come on and the dance floor would just catch fire, as much as a dance floor in a goth club can be, animated like that. But yeah, I mean, it really takes me back. And it's just such a bittersweet lyric too. I think Ian's pain and suffering, I think it really does come through in this, not physical pain, but emotional pain. So it's a very, very powerful song.
All right. So all of you out there in Madness World, you know about our love for Paul Weller. I wasn't going to leave the jam off of this, but I think by far their most dynamic and hookiest song, and that's saying a lot, given that they wrote A Town Called Malice. But nonetheless, I think the best song they've got going for them is Going Underground.
Some people might say my life is in a rut. I'm quite happy with what I got. People might say that I should strive for more, but I'm so happy I can see the fine things happening here today. A show of strength with your boys brigade. And I'm so happy and you're so kind. You want more money, of course I don't mind. If I give you the text,
Meh.
Meh.
Come on.
The jam really doesn't do anything for me. I mean,
Oh my word. Heresy.
other than Town Called Malice, I do like that song, but yeah, it doesn't, not my thing.
All right, fine. Moving on to something I hope you love. So the next song, very important to me. One, because Morrissey is, really one of my all-time favorite artists, if not all-time favorite celebrities, because, he's got his shtick. We all know Morrissey. And it's a later song for him. Maybe you'd say mid-career, because he's actually done a great deal since then. But why the song is so special for me is because it's probably one of the first songs that my daughter learned all the way through and learned all the lyrics for.
Oh,
Yeah, it's very sweet. She was disallowed being able to hear Kids Bop and all that cleaned up shit for kids, and Raffi and all that numbness. We raised her on a strict diet of the things we listen to. Maybe a little Weird Al in there. Kids like Weird Al, but yeah. So she learned this song early on, and I thought it was really endearing. The song is The First of the Gang to Die.
We are the pretty, petty things, and you're standing on our streets, where Hector was the first of the gang with a gun in his hand, and the first to do time, the first of the gang to die. The gang with a gun in his hand, and the first to do time, the first of the gang to die. Oh my.
so how old was she when she was singing this?
I don't know, 5-ish.
Really?
Absolutely.
That's a pretty sophisticated lyric for a little 5-year-old.
Yeah.
No?
I assure you, I knew all the words to Frankie and Johnny and Johnny Cash songs, Reno, yeah. I knew all those songs by the time I was Staggerly. I totally knew Staggerly by the time I was 5.
Okay.
All right. So Lori, I bet you really take to this next band that I selected.
I do.
And how couldn't you really? Yeah. So I had to have Susie and the Banshees on there. Susie, probably my favorite female punk artist, I would say. How about for you?
She's definitely up there. I don't know if I'd say she's my favorite, but she's definitely up there. And again, the goth clubs, right? I mean, everybody who's goth is into Susie. What song did you pick?
I picked Peekaboo.
Creeping up the back stairs, linking into dark stars. Listen, slurps and batches. The tip back out of home. She has many gases. She'll do what you want her to. Laying there, that sweet submission. Tries to win the turn on cue. Peekaboo, peekaboo,
So if I'm not mistaken, the background music was recorded and played backwards, was it not?
Yeah, that it was.
It's a very unusual sound. I really do like this song. Why did you pick this one?
Well, it had that, I suppose, a little bit more upbeat vibe to it because of the instrumentation. Wheels on Fire or something like that just wasn't going to fit in the mix.
And, again, I always have these associations with things. And there was an episode of Beavis and Butthead where they were making fun of this song that now it's all I can. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't remember.
Oh, I'm going to find it and send it to you now.
I look forward to that very much.
Okay, so now the next few songs, I think we're getting into familiar poly territory. These are bands that I would associate with you. Susie, I that kind of took me by surprise. I guess I should have known that you're a Susie fan, but I guess it just hasn't come up,
That it hasn't, but the next band has, and boy, was this a tough one to fit in. So I really wanted to have Slade included on here, and all their classic hits, Mama We're All Crazy Now, Come On Feel the Noise, they just weren't going to fit in the mix. And yeah, maybe the argument could be made that this one is a bit of a stretch. It's one of their last recordings. It's Run, Run Away. Now, some folks would probably say that this is that band jumping the shark. They were trying to cash in on the notoriety they were receiving with the American glam hair metal community. And so they were trying to, pump out an album that would really resonate. And thankfully, it's not hair metal, but, not really punk either, but it does have that sort of thumping, heavy guitar. I think it's got that Scottish vibe in there happening. I love it.
I really like the call and response. And I remember this song. This is actually the first song I ever heard by Slade. I remember seeing the video on MTV, but such a good energy with that call and response. It's so cool.
Yep, that it is. And moving on then, another band that people would probably know I was not going to avoid putting in a playlist. It's T-Rex. And this one I think fits surprisingly well. 20th Century Boy. So Lori, to me, aside from maybe the female backing vocals section of that, that is really pure punk.
Okay. I kind of consider it more like a glam rock, but I can see, there's some punk elements to it for sure.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
It's a classic though. It's a classic rocker. I think it's been covered probably hundreds of times.
That it has. Yeah.
But it is a really good jam.
And again, we've got the Kinks. Now, I wasn't going to not include the Kinks. And I really deliberated about this one too, about what to put on there. I wanted to go maybe with Where Have All the Good Times Gone, maybe something a little bit more low key, but it wouldn't fit with the jam. So it really had to leave me with only one choice. You Really Got Me.
You really got me going. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night. Yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Oh yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night. You really got me. You really got me. You really got me.
So Lori, I'd like to think maybe I'm exposing you a great deal more to the Kinks. What are your thoughts about You Really Got Me?
I think it's one of their better songs. They really don't do much for me, but I do like this one. And it is a rock and roll classic. I remember hearing it on my parents' radio in the car growing up, There's no way you can not like that song. So yeah, it's a good choice.
Yeah, and it's an important song. It really is considered the proto-punk song. It's really what all punk was going to be based off of. It's just that it took them about 9 years to get to that point.
I think we're almost at the end of your playlist.
That we are. And of course, I was going to be including Madness in the mix. I deliberated a little bit. I had actually chose Fireball XL5, and that wasn't going to work out on account of it doesn't appear on Spotify in the United States. So I had to go with the obvious choice after that. And I chose the best Madness song ever, Baggy Trousers.
Naughty boys in nasty schools, headmasters breaking all the rules, having fun and playing pool, smashing up the woodwork tools. All the teachers in the pub, passing round a ready rub, trying not to think of when the lunchtime bell will ring again. Oh, what fun we had, but did it really turn out bad? All I learned at school was how to bet not break the rules. Oh, what fun we had, but at the time it seemed so bad, trying different ways to make a difference too. The headmasters had enough today. Have gone away, gone to fight with next to school. Every term that is the rule. Sits alone and vents his pain. Same old backsides again.
All right, well, that brings this episode to a close. Polly, thank you for sharing your summer mixtape with us. That was a really cool experience, kind of a look into your mind in a weird sort of way.
Yeah, I don't know that there's much of a line of people waiting to do that, but thank you. Yeah, it was fun to do, and of course the point being, why don't our listeners just go out, do something fun, listen to some tunes rather than you and I just prattle on about Madness related stuff. Take a break. It's summer, people.
Well, so I have sent you my mixtape, and we'll probably be doing an episode with my mix maybe in September. Hopefully.
That we are, and folks should look forward to it. Lori, as you know, is my pop pair bookend to my punk nonsense. And so, speak of nonsense, that last sentence didn't make any sense. But yeah, so she's the pop yin to my punk yang, and you're gonna love her playlist.
Well, thank you. And it's going to be a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B. It's a good mix, I think. So on that note, everybody, it's a goodbye from me.
And that's a goodbye for me. Go get a beer, Stateside Madness. Have some fun in the sun.
Well, hello, Stateside Madness. This is Lori. Polly left it to me to choose the closing song this week. And so what I've chosen is maybe a little bit different, right? The theme of this episode was Polly's summer playlist. Well, I'd like to play something that I would associate with summer. Growing up, I would spend my summers with my father, and my father happens to be a huge fan of Willie Nelson. Now, Willie Nelson recorded a cover of the Jimmy Cliff song, The Harder They Come, which, as Madness fans know, was also recorded by Madness back in 1992. So, without any further ado, here is Willie Nelson, The Harder They Come. Thanks so much for listening.
Well, they tell me of a pie in the sky waiting for me when I die. But between the day you're born and when you die, they never even seem to hear you cry. So as sure as the sun will shine, I'm gonna get my share now of what's mine. The harder they come, the harder they fall, one and all. The harder they come, the harder they fall, one and all.
oppressors are trying to keep me down, trying to drive me underground. And they think that they have got the battle won. I say forgive them, Lord, they know not what they've done. 'Cause as sure as the sun will shine, I'm gonna get my share now of what's mine. And the harder they come, the harder they fall, one and all. And the harder they come, the harder they fall, one and all. I keep on fighting for the things I want, though I know that when you're dead you can't. But I'd rather be a free man in my grave than living as a puppet or a slave. So as sure as the sun will shine, I'm gonna get my share now of what's mine. And then the harder they come, the harder they fall, one and all. The harder they come, the harder they fall, one and all. And the harder they come,